Hello, I'm Sophie welcome back to my channel, and welcome to a Q&A of sorts. It is a Q&A, and thank you for 3,000 subscribers. I'll say that first. I am doing this Q&A in honor of hitting 3,000 subscribers, which is so exciting. The last time I did a real Q&A was for 1,000 subscribers, so I thought I'd bring it back. You know, it's fun, it's silly. So I have a few questions here, like 15, I think, that we'll be answering today. Hopefully I don't talk too long, because that'll be bad. But we're going to try and get through all 15 here. If it does go over, I'll make a separate video, so it's not like 2 hours long. Cool, let's begin. So for this, I had the option of whether or not you wanted to leave your name for the question, or if you wanted to just ask it. No questions asked. So a couple people did put their names. I'll add that when I get to their questions. Otherwise, I have no idea who wrote them, so we're just gonna answer them. First is from Gia. I'm assuming the friend of mine, the writer friend. Please correct me if I'm wrong. She asks, what is the reason you started writing? That is a great question. That's a great question. Honestly, I had tried to write since like elementary school. I had never actually sat down and committed to coming up with my own stories and actually writing them. But every time I would read a book I would really love, I'd be like, I want to write something like that. I want to create a world like that I can be in, that I can make my own, in a sense. And for the longest time, that was what I would do. I would pretty much complete copy and paste whatever world the book I had enjoyed was based around, and I would try to write my own characters in a world like that and pretend it's my own story. I guess in a sense you could call it fan fiction, except that all I was doing was taking the concept of the world and making my own story on top of that kind of world. And obviously these never went anywhere because I never had the, I guess, drive or resolution to keep developing the story into something that was full and complete until like middle school-ish, when I actually committed to being like, oh yeah, this is going to be a novel and I want to finish this novel. Once again, I didn't finish it, but it was inspired by another book I had read. This time it was different because it was a nonfiction book that I read that kind of sparked this idea, and it was going to be a fictional account of some character I had come up with some friends in middle school because we thought it was hilarious. And it was going to be like a fictional biography of this character. I think I got maybe a chapter into that nonfiction thing before turning it into fiction and turning it into something that had more of a narrative to it, more of a novel-like tone. And that's where it really all started. But at the base of it, why did I start writing? Because I loved the books I would read and I wanted to create something like that. That's really it. Every time I'd read something good, I'm like, I want to do that too. Let me do that. After many failed attempts and writing a couple paragraphs before being like, I'm bored, I want to read a different book, I had finally figured out how to actually, like, you know, write a book with its own original plot. Took a while, but we got there. Next question is, I can't finish a first draft. I'm afraid I don't have enough ideas for a whole book, but I do have a lot of setup ideas. I rarely get past 10 to 15K on my drafts. Any tips? So usually, thankfully, I'm able to finish my drafts even if I don't really like the middle part and it gets kind of boring. I'm like, okay, just push through, we'll get to the end, done. But there is some situations where I have ended up not finishing drafts, and this is what I've observed from myself as to why I never finish those drafts. It is because once I get to that middle part, where I assume you are at 10 to 15,000 words, it just gets boring. It gets boring to write. There's nothing really happening anymore, or you don't know what should happen next. For specifics, there was this fantasy novel I wanted to write, one NaNoWriMo, that I didn't have an outline for, a proper outline for, and that fell off after like 3 chapters because I didn't know what was going to happen next, and I couldn't figure it out, and I had given up. That was it. And then another one was Project Moss, where I did have a full outline in a sense, where we could see the whole story going through. But what I had written and what I had outlined wasn't intriguing enough to me. As the writer, your story should interest you and should intrigue you and should motivate you to keep going. And I feel like a lot of the times drafts don't get finished because it isn't as intriguing anymore, that it's lost that interesting allure to it. And I don't know if you're a plotter or a pantser or what, but I would say if you are a pantser, I would try outlining. I would try figuring out what you want the entire story to be about. Try and figure out that outline so you have a backbone to work off of while you're writing, and so you don't have to stop and be like, hey, what's going to happen next? And if you are an outliner, I would try to make more, I don't want to be mean and be like, make more interesting stories. But like, that's what I found for myself. It's like, if you're just putting stuff into the story to be like, oh yeah, this has to happen, so we'll let it happen, it's gonna get boring. It's gonna get like annoying. It's gonna get like dead and sad. But if you put a full meaning behind what's happening, if you give the characters reasons to keep going, and you really tie it all together, it makes it a lot more compelling. It makes it a lot more interesting. I know that's a lot easier said than done, and I've definitely had my own problems with that. Project Moss, where my characters were just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. But if you really sit down and you really think and you consider, okay, what can the characters do in the story that they need to do in the story, and what are they doing just because they're just being thrown around in this world, that can really help make a story that's more interesting, that's more intriguing, that's more fun to write, and you can keep going and you can actually finish a draft. Again, that is what I've learned from myself, and the difference between the drafts I actually finish and the drafts I don't. Main thing, actually know what you're writing about, make an outline that you can follow and you can reference, and then even if you have a full plot that is boring, to really look back and consider how to make the outline more interesting, not just for the sake of it, but one that will reinforce the story and reinforce the characters and really weave your whole story together. Once again, easier said than done, but that is what I've learned. Question number 3. All right, this is from Zene. Please tell me I'm saying your name right. We've been friends for so long and I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I'm so sorry. She asks, do you write your characters to feel comfort or understand certain emotions? And does writing in general and your characters form part of who you are? Love this question. This question's so fun. I feel like yes to the understand certain emotions thing. As I've written more, I've realized that writing is almost a form of journaling for me, because I've tried journaling. I've tried writing how I feel down in a context of me. That's never worked. But alternatively, I have found that when I write how I'm feeling into characters, it comes off so much easier. It comes off so much better. And it's still me. It's part of me, but it's them feeling it. So it's just like a projection of myself, which is what a character is, essentially, right? But I definitely feel like when I write my characters, most of what they go through, not everything, because there's a bit of a fantastical element to each of my projects, but at the base root level, everything that they are feeling is me sort of trying to understand how I'm feeling a little bit more and write it down and see it play out. So yeah, I feel like maybe writing my characters is a sort of way to understand emotions, my own emotions. And does writing in general and your characters form a part of who you are? Yes. 100% yes. I feel like I've said this before, but every time I start a new project and I have a cast of characters, of main characters usually, all I pretty much do is I take parts of my own personality and divvy it up among them. And they get their own little mix of who I am. And as the story goes on, they sort of develop their own things, of course, but at the base, at the very beginning, they are just a piece of me dropped, and that's a new person. So every story is a part of me. We are we are one big mass that is me. And really on the flip side, I feel like at this point, a lot of my projects do affect who I am too. There's this, I don't want to admit this, but it's really funny. Sometimes when I don't want to study, sometimes when I don't want to like do my homework or anything, I will think about the characters of Project What, who are at a boarding school. And they're very smart kids, and they're working really hard for a better future that they want. And every time I don't want to do my homework, I think of them. I think of them in Act 1, working really hard at school, and I'm like, I shouldn't let them down. I shouldn't let them down. I put my characters through this grueling, rigorous curriculum, and I can't even finish my physics homework. Like, I'm not going to let my characters down. So I'll do the homework. So they very much form a part of who I am and really influence me now, because I mean, Project What has been a thing for like 4 or 5 years, so it's definitely taken on its own sort of entity, its own sort of vibe that that at this point is somewhat beyond me. Hopefully that answers your question. Then, number 4 is, do you have any tips on how to manage school and writing? I don't know how you do it. Well, thank you. Trying my best. What I really, honestly, am not very good at managing time. And I really just squeeze whatever I can in whenever I can and pray. Hope for the best. And really use some like little like time crunching hacks and stuff too, to like just, it doesn't matter the means, we just need to get to the end, you know? At least for like school and stuff. Writing, I'm trying not to cut too much because that's just more work for me in the end. But like studying for school, like I'll find videos I can watch instead of reading the textbook, because the videos take a lot less time and they're probably a lot more easy to understand than the textbook, you know what I mean? And mostly it is just understanding what needs to be done when. So a lot of planning at the beginning of the week, at the beginning of the month, where I can see, oh, I want to have a video out here. Oh, I want to have a project at this point here. Oh, I have assignments due here, here, and here. So I know, so on certain days, I know when I can write, when I have the time to, and other times where I probably won't write at all because I've got like 2 homework assignments due that night, or I've got a test coming up that I need to study for. It's just knowing when to make those sacrifices in order to prioritize school, and then every other time, it's writing time. So really working back from like, okay, school here, school here, school here, school most of the week, and then wherever there's time, usually on the weekend, is writing time. That's really it. Seeing where it can be squeezed in, though sometimes I do really get into writing and get into my project, and I'm like, I'll just write a little bit more and I'll deal with the consequences of doing my homework later. And that does happen often, but it does all get done, and that's what matters. Also, sorry, the lighting is going to change throughout this video because it's winter and the sun sets very quickly. Hopefully I can finish this video before the sun does set, though, depending on how long I yap. Anyways, question number 5. So, Jana or Yana asks, what do you think about using AI in writing? To what extent is it considered okay, if at all? I am very much someone who says writing in AI or any creative work in AI are non-compatible. That's terrible. It is a soulless form of art. It's a soulless form of a replication of art that is stealing from real, actual human artists without their consent, and is going to ruin art if it gets taken too far. AI is terrifying, AI is soulless, and the people that use it to make a profit and to pretend that they're an artist are gross and disgusting, and that's not cool, man. That being said, that is, I don't know if that answers your question, but to what extent is it considered okay? I would say is to use it as a brainstorming tool. That is probably the greatest extent that's not stealing from other creators that have, unbeknownst to them, been used as a tool to help this AI learn, you know? If you're trying to come up with like title ideas, or you're trying to visualize the world of like a fantasy novel or something, I feel like AI could really help bring those sorts of names and images, especially, into reality. That could make it easier to write. But that's pretty much all I would say. The extent of AI in writing is good. If you do get ideas from AI of like title ideas or like how to fix a sentence or like names and stuff, taking that verbatim from ChatGPT or whatever you're using, still not great, I don't think. And also on top of that, if you're looking for title names, if you're looking for character names, if you're looking for like city names, there are a ton of generators out there that don't use AI. that have been programmed by a human person that have been useful for years before all these AI applications have come out. So if you don't want to support AI and how much carbon they put into the atmosphere just to make it work, there are other resources that you can use to generate this kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I don't like AI. Can you tell? Can you tell? Anyways, number 6. How do you outline your books, standalones, and series? Also, where do you get your clothes from? Because all your fits eat. Thank you. I'll answer that one first because that's easy. All my clothes are from a mishmash of places. This shirt, don't remember where it's from. This jacket I got with a gift card from my job. It's like a Scrubs thing. It's like from a Scrubs website. So it's like a medical jacket almost. Medical jacket. But a lot of my stuff is thrifted, vintage, hand-me-downs, and that's kind of it. A lot of stuff from like Goodwill, a lot of stuff from like my parents, my mom or my dad that I get silly like graphic t-shirts from, or like sweaters and stuff. Vintage stores, I try not to get too much from those because they're so expensive, but they have really nice pieces. There's a couple things I have that are like from the 70s and stuff that I absolutely adore. And if I had more money, I'd have more vintage clothing. It's really just a matter of luck on whatever days I go shopping on whether or not I'll get something good. Yeah, hit up your thrift stores, hit up your small thrift stores, places no one knows about, because that's where you'll find the heat. Or if you have the money, curated vintage stores, because they put out the stuff that the people want. So pretty much everything you'll see is fire. But on a more serious note, how do I outline standalones and series? Now this kind of varies with time. I can link this video up here where I talk about my entire writing process from brainstorming to like finished draft. But a lot of the times my outlines begin as a vague idea of what I want the story to do, what I want the characters to do, and also some like world building notes, some things I know about the characters already, and it's just kind of like a cloud of ideas that I will slowly refine into a workable list. For the most part, this refining happens in multiple stages. It can be in like a digital notebook, it can be on scrap pieces of paper, it can be in drawings, it can be on post-it notes on my wall, and this slowly gets boiled down into plot cards. For the most part, every story ends up with a nice little stack of colorful index cards that I will reference for the entire draft. I would say for the most part, I do treat every book I outline almost as a standalone, at least like at the moment, where I'm just trying to develop one book at a time before moving on to the next one, and then we can start refining once I know what the second book is about. So those kind of end up all the same. It's just refining and refining and refining until I'm like, okay, this is a book I would read. This is something I would enjoy. But an exception would be Project Star, where I outlined all 3 books together. This lighting is getting weird. Sorry, I'm gonna be cut in half. But yeah, I outlined Project Star all together. That was a bunch of sticky notes and little cards all over my door. Each row kind of represented one book, and it was the vaguest ideas of what I wanted each book to be about and what I wanted the characters' arcs to be in each book. Once I could look at the door and be like, okay, these are solid bones that I can work off of, that is when the refining began. And I think I put everything into a spreadsheet, which I annotated like crazy, and then from that spreadsheet I put everything on cards, and I had 3 little stacks of cards that represented each book. But yeah, it's just starting vague and adding more and more detail and more detail until I have enough detail to write the book. That is it. That's all I do. Right, and then question number 7, Saber asks, how do you start and finish your books? I've only ever finished 1 book before, and not any since then. It was like 4 years ago. Love your vids and so excited for the writing retreat. Thank you. Hope you're having fun. I'm doing pretty decent for the writing retreat so far, and I'll have videos out about that very soon after this one. I feel like I already answered this in that second question. Yeah, I could just reiterate once again. As the writer, you need to be interested and excited to keep writing, and I feel like a big issue with that is not fully understanding the plot, not fully understanding what you want to write. If you're a pantser and you have this problem, maybe try plotting. If you're a plotter and you're having this problem, maybe try putting more attention on your outline before you start writing and really making sure every scene matters. Every scene is contributing to the overall story. Every scene is character driven, and that there isn't just a ton of random filler stuff in the book that's like, we're doing this because we want to do this, because we can, because that can really make you lose interest very fast. Because you're like, oh, why am I writing this anyways? It's like, beats me, man. Beats me. All right, this next one's very fun. If you had to be stuck on a deserted island with one of your characters, who would you choose? Easy. It's going to be Anastasia from Project Star. She is a genius. She is a leader. She is resourceful. She is a survivalist. She has been trained in all of these things as the upcoming captain of the space station that her father runs. So if I was on a deserted island, she would take control. She would know how to get food. She would know how to get water. She would know how to keep us alive. She would know how to keep us sane. I would trust her with my life, kind of. She's a little self-destructive when she thinks she's doing the right thing, but I would trust her enough. I would trust her enough to keep us alive, and I would trust her to figure out how to contact people to come save us, because she probably knows how to do that too. Next is, do you ever want to write something in a different medium, like film, TV, comics, etc.? I had tried writing a comic before. I do not have the skill to draw a comic, so that fell to the side, but I'd love to do something like a graphic novel someday. That sounds like so much fun. Also to write like a short film or like something in the screenplay format would be super cool. I'd love to be able to just take a vision in my head that would be a movie in a sense and put it on the page. I've yet to try that. It just seems fascinating. It seems so cool to be able to do that, and then in some amazing, awesome world to be able to see that actually be put on the screen. Yeah, graphic novels or like a screenplay. That would be so cool. Someday I will begin to learn how to write those, but not yet. All right, this is number 10. I know how to read numbers, I promise. Do you have any advice on how to deal with revising a cringy first draft? First of all, the big one that everyone says, I know it's hard to like come to terms with and to realize, but every first draft is going to suck. Every first draft is going to be garbage. It's going to be terrible. You're going to hate it. But the fact that it is down means that you have something to work off of, and that is what matters. And honestly, I would say embrace the cringe. I have many first drafts with stupid, cheesy lines in them that I'm like, you know what? It's just a product of the era in which I wrote it, and it's going to happen. It's going to be there, and the good thing is it can be fixed. It's not a published book. You're not on a deadline with a publisher or something like that. Maybe you are, which good luck, but most likely you're not. And I feel like that's the big thing. It's like you can read it and you can not like it and you can say it's cringy and weird, but you can recognize that it's cringy and weird. You can see that there's a problem, and now you can fix it. You know that you can fix it and you can move forward. Okay, the next question is, how do you overcome imposter syndrome while writing? In all honesty, I feel like anytime I tell myself that like my writing isn't good enough to be like a writer, like I'm not a real writer, the immediate counter to that is that like I'm making my own thing. I'm literally making up a whole new world. I have whole new people in my head right now that I have created with my brain. There's no other, like there's no reference here. It's all up here, just chilling, waiting to be used. I mean, like there's the whole thing too that I've seen before I was really into writing, where the whole imposter syndrome thing came from, oh, I'm not a real artist. Because I've drawn and I've painted much longer than I've actually like consistently written. And I don't know, maybe I've just never had as deep of a problem with imposter syndrome as other people before, which is I'm very thankful for. But it's like, it's just a label. It's just a name you can give yourself. It's like, oh, if you're not a writer, like I'm literally writing. What do writers do? They write. And because I am writing, I am a writer. That's probably such a basic, boring answer, but I'm not a very philosophical thinker, I'm gonna be honest. So I'm not the best at this kind of stuff. But how do you overcome imposter syndrome while writing? It's like everyone starts at a certain point. Everyone at some point is a bad writer. People are still bad writers. There's people that are published that are bad writers that people don't like. And at the same time, writing is a very subjective thing. Someone's amazing writing, someone who thinks that, I don't know, some author is an amazing writer, someone else will think sucks, and vice versa. And it's a skill that you can improve with time. It's not something that like, oh, if your writing sucks today, it'll never get better. And you'll write the same in 2 years than like as you do right now. And I mean, it's like pretty much like the last question. I would embrace the cringe. If you're looking at your writing and you're like, oh, this sucks, this is terrible, I'll never be a real writer, it can always be improved upon. You can always learn new things about writing craft. You can always develop your skills. And whatever you're writing today is not the end. That is not the end product. You don't have to share that. You never have to share it if you don't want. But yeah, that is my opinion. Whenever the imposter syndrome question comes up, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. But that's the best I can give you. I apologize. Number 12 is, what is the best software / app to use for writing? Which one do you use? I haven't tried a ton of writing softwares. I had wanted to try Scrivener before, but I had also heard that Scrivener is a lot better on Mac than it is Windows, and I have a Windows computer, so I never really tried it. For the longest time, I used Google Docs. That's pretty reliable. It's online. You can use it on a laptop. You can use it on a phone. You can use it on an iPad. You can use it pretty much anywhere. And it's all saved to the cloud, so you don't have to like just save over and over or risk losing your writing as easily. The only thing I would say about Google Docs is that it's not designed specifically for writers. It's just a document editing and creating app. You can't really organize things by chapter or by scene, or you can't have references to characters or like link stuff as easily as if it was all in one program. I'm sure you can use Google Docs to create stuff like that, but it's not the intended use. You know? And I am currently using Papyrus Author. It's a free program. You can pay for it monthly if you want some extra features, but I don't really need them. I love it. I love it so far. It's made for novel writing. They even have like features that let you export from Papyrus Author to like print sizes or like to e-prints or anything like that, which is convenient, I'm sure, for people that are actually sharing their work. But it also allows you to organize directly into chapters, into scenes, into annotations, into events. There's so many things that you can like organize your timeline into. Speaking of which, there's an actual timeline feature where you can like set up the lore of your story and to know like when each scene in the book is happening. There's character lists, there's item lists, there's setting lists, there's like brainstorming boards you can use. Like you can literally put everything you need for your project into the document on Papyrus Author, and there's probably more you can do that I don't even know about because I don't pay for it. But as just drafting and keeping my drafts organized, I love it. I love it, and it's free. I can't complain about free. So that's probably the best software for writing for me, just because you don't have to pay for it, keeps everything organized, you can write, and it's pretty easy to export everything once you need it. That is coming also from me who's not used many writing programs, and that is also the one I use right now. So, yes. Ooh, okay, this one is... Ooh, okay, bringing out the drama. I'm just kidding. What is my favorite original character? Ooh. I mean, let's see. My favorite original character of all time? That's a crazy question. Who's the one I think about the most and I just, like, scream and cry and want to give them a huge hug? I'm being, like, so washed out by the sun right now. It is what it is. Okay. You guys can see me. That's what matters. I feel like it's a tie between all three of the Project What main characters. They mean the world to me. I want to just pick one, but I can't pick just one. You know what? I'll pick one. It's gotta be Jamie. Every time a scene of hers comes on in the book while I'm reading it. I'm like, there she is. There's my queen. There's the light of my life. She's such a motivated person. She's such a, like, confident person. She's not arrogant, but she's so sure of herself, and she's so confident in herself that I love her. I'm like, yes, you should be confident in yourself. You're so capable of everything. She goes through a lot in, I guess not during the book, but there's a lot of stuff that sets up her character that just really shows who she is and what we see of her in the actual story. And I just love her. I just love her so much. She's so sweet. She's so smart. She is so passionate about what she loves and about the people who she is trying to protect and defend. And I love her. And I love her so much. I would say probably second is Elliot, because Elliot has had the most rounded out character since the beginning. He has been the character with the most upfront flaws since the beginning. I feel like that makes him someone that you can really connect to more, but his were more apparent from the beginning of the story because it is his flaws that really drive his arc. He's such a cutie. He's so funny. He's here just for, like, vibes. And he's a nerd. He's a little, like, geek. He loves video games. He loves sci-fi. He loves fantasy. Like, he's really a child after my own heart. And I love him for that. And his character, his arc, especially with how I've changed it recently, adds so much to him that just, I don't know, it makes you root for him more, I feel. It makes me root for him more. And then, unfortunately, last is Audi. She's the first character I made for this project and the main character of the first book. And that doesn't mean I don't love her. I love her. She's amazing. She's so, like, deadpan all the time. And she's so funny for that. She speaks what's in her heart. She has no filter. She has no control of her tone of voice, which makes it even better when it comes out of her mouth. She becomes obsessed with a dangerous religious group on the island during the book, and her obsession is so fun to write. I mean, she is one of the first real characters I've made, probably the first real character I've made, and she's very similar to me, I would say, which maybe is why she's not the top favorite, because she is so similar to me that it's like, it's kind of weird if I put her at the top, because it's like, oh, I'm my favorite. But we are like this. Me and Audi are cut from the same cloth, and I adore her, but once again, she is third on the top 3. Does that count? Does that answer the question of favorite original character? I don't think so, but I make my own rules around here, okay? All right, the penultimate question is, what is the first story you ever wrote? I'm gonna have 3 answers. Does that count? The first one I can remember, it wasn't a full story that I wrote. It wasn't a full, complete novel, but it is the first time I can fully remember that I tried to write a story that would have been novel length. It was in elementary school. I don't know how old I was or what grade I was in, probably like third or fourth. And I had just finished reading City of Embers. City of Ember? Amber? City of Ember. I had just finished reading City of Ember. Please let me know you guys know what that book is. I was obsessed with it. I loved the idea of, like, an underground city and people being trapped in it and trying to escape. Maybe subconsciously I still love it because of Project Glass. I don't know. But I had finished that book and I was like, I need to write something like this. That was the first thing I ever really wrote, was something where I tried to, like, emulate those vibes, that underground city vibe, that dystopian vibe. I probably wrote like 2 pages on wide-ruled loose leaf paper before that got scrapped. But that was the first real attempt I remember of writing something like a novel. Second sort of entrance into this question is a novella thing I wrote in middle school for English class. We did NaNoWriMo in my English class, and everyone was supposed to come up with a story and write it. I ended up writing 12,000 words, finishing the book entirely. And this one kind of doesn't count because I also took this story from another creator. I think it was a YouTuber or something. They were making a story out of drawings they were creating, and I really liked the concept of those drawings, and I used that to figure out what I wanted to write about. So it wasn't my complete idea, and I apologize for stealing, but I also don't have that book anymore. So it is a secret between you, me, and my English teacher of that year. And I'll never do anything with it because, one, stolen idea, two, wasn't good. But that was really the first book I had ever finished. Book. It was 12,000 words. I write that on like the regular at this point, but it was the first thing that I did start to finish, and it was complete. So that's a milestone. And then the real answer to this question, I think, is that project I talked about at the beginning of this video that was a sort of spin-off of a nonfiction book I had read that made me want to create a fictional character that I could write a biography about that ended up turning into a novel. Something that had more of a narrative flow to it. I don't think I ever actually finished a draft of it. That was the first actual story that was original, that was my own, that I wanted to be a novel, that I had begun outlining, and that I had drafted a good amount of. That is probably the first story I wrote. It was called Project Babysitter. You can still find videos about it on my channel, which is insane. Someone reminded me of that recently, and it made me feel gross. But that was the first story I ever really tried to write. And then the first one I've actually finished and completed that was original and a novel and my own was the first draft of Project What. So, you know, but those three other stories, I feel like they still count. And then the last question of today, we've made it. And hopefully this video isn't too long. Do you ever share what you're writing with family and or friends? Is this something I should stop being afraid of? That is a great question. Okay, for 2 or 3 years, the first 2 or 3 years I actually seriously started writing, where I wrote the first draft of Project What, the second draft of Project What, Project Glass, Project End, I think, if you guys remember that, and Project Quest. I had written 5 stories by that time. I had not told a soul in my real life what I was doing. No one knew I was writing. Maybe my siblings did, because I'd hang out with them a lot and they would see me working on stuff, but I didn't tell friends what I was doing. I didn't tell my parents what I was doing, and I've only really dropped the bomb on my parents after draft 2. That is also up on my channel, where I show my mom the draft for the first time. But up until that point, I didn't tell anyone in my real life that I was a writer, that I was writing novels, that I had 5 novels already written. Like, no one knew. I just didn't want the questions. I didn't want it to be like, oh, like, what's your story about? Like, oh, when are you gonna publish it? Oh, when are you gonna get a real job? I didn't want the onslaught. I didn't want the attention. I didn't want people to pry, you know? So I was like, if they don't know, they won't ask. But I did drop the bomb one day. I think at that point I was confident enough in my writing that I could share it with others. And I was confident enough in my ability to explain what my writing was about and what I was doing to others that I was like, okay, people can know now. People can understand, because I will be able to explain it to them without fumbling over my words and crying. As to if this is something you should be no longer afraid of, I feel like that's really up to what you feel inside. Like I said, I really started only sharing my writing with the people around me once I was confident enough in being able to share something I had written, because I was like, oh yeah, people would actually enjoy reading this little snippet if they asked. If they asked to read it, I'd be like, oh hey, yeah, like I can give you something to read. But I mean, even if you want to share that you are writing, that doesn't mean you have to be open to letting people read it. It's like, oh yeah, I write, and it's like, oh, can I read anything? It's like, oh, it's not really ready to be like read by anyone. Like that's a valid answer, I feel. But I totally understand where you're coming from, being like scared of sharing that you write, or sharing like about what you're writing, even if it's just like explaining what it is. Sometimes I still get asked what I'm writing by like people I just met, and I tell them I'm a writer, and I'm like, I don't know how I can explain this to you right now. And it's awkward trying to come up with like a little sentence that tells people what you're writing about, and then people look at you weird when you try to explain it and you look crazy. Like that, I think that just comes with the territory. What I have learned is that people are usually like interested in learning what you're writing about, especially if they see you at your laptop all the time and they're like, okay, what is being cooked up here? And I mean, getting that feedback, seeing people's excitement for your own stories is like so motivating. It's like, okay, people could be interested in what I have to show to the world. Like, maybe I should keep working at it. But building up that confidence can take a while. Took me 3 years. And sometimes the awkwardness will never go away. It is what it is. It is what it is. I've said this so many times in this video. Embrace the cringe. If you embrace the cringe, you can bring in that like support for you. And then next time you see that person, they're like, oh, hey, how's your little novel going? How's your book going? That's fun. That's cool. I like being asked, oh, hey, how's writing going? Like, that's like, wow, you remember. But that is all the questions. That is all of them. Thank you so much to everyone who asked. These are so fun. I would love to do Q&As just like throughout vlogs and stuff, if anyone's ever interested to just do like a writing vlog plus Q&A at the same time. But I thought for 3,000 subscribers it was a fun little occasion. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out. If you are interested in like writing vlog Q&As, and if you have a question that you want to ask that I haven't answered before, leave it all below. I'd love to know. Otherwise, I hope to see you in the next one. Peace. Wow.